Welcome to part 2 of the forge build. If you haven't had a chance to see part 1, let me bring you up to speed. So I had to cut that video short. I used refractory cement, and I believe that I used too much too quick. As you can see, it just never cured, even after 2 days. So I scrapped the refractory cement and I decided to go to a local pottery store and I picked up bricks for a kiln. I should have done that from the very start. That's where this video picks up. We're going to put bricks as the second layer of insulation on top of the KO wool. All right, so going with the brick, that was a much smarter idea. It's easy to cut. I just use a handsaw here, as you can see. They were $5 or $6 a piece, and I was done with insulating the forge in really kind of just a matter of minutes. I used the brick over the top of the KO wool. I didn't use a rigidizer because none of the wool is exposed. That might be something I go back and do at a later date. But we'll see how it goes. It's probably not something I'm going to worry about just yet. So you can see where the hole was for the burner. So now this is going to go on top of the forge and is going to allow me to hold the burner in place. I'm going to make the burner after I get this drilled and go, oh wait, maybe I should clamp this. Yeah, I definitely should have clamped it. Okay, once I get this tapped and I'll get this tack welded on top. That way I have placement for the burner. Now, a lot of times you'll see burners at an angle. That probably helps to dissipate the heat. I wanted to go straight because I have other ideas with this forge. Parts for the burner. So you got a 3/4 by 1.5 inch bell reducer. You have a 6-inch 3/4 pipe. You have a stainless reducer that's 3/4 by 1 inch. Also a female to female ball valve. You also have a 1/8 to 4-inch nipple, 1/8 inch cap. I'll put all of that down in the description. I was blowing through that here in the video. Once you drill through the 1.5 inch by 3/4 bell reducer, that's where you're going to put your 4-inch by 1/8 inch pipe. Basically center your pipe within the reducer, and you want to find center of the inside of that pipe. Because what you're going to do is drill a hole in this little brass pipe, and you will actually thread in a MIG welding tip. Now, I'm using a 0.35 tip because that's typically what I use here in my shop. I've seen some where you can use a 030, like an 030 or an 025, but you're going to see later on this actually works just as good. And pair of needles pliers will help you get down into there and tighten that up. Now I use pipe thread. Maybe you have it when I'm doing plumbing and things. You're not really under pressure, but I figured, you know, what could it hurt? It might prevent some leakage as the propane makes it to its exit port. I had to get an adapter that goes from the pipe to the ball valve. This is the finished unit. Something that I actually forgot to put on the main list was this flare fitting. The flare fitting goes to the line in the barbecue regulator, which I'll show you a picture later. I use a 6-inch pipe nipple that goes into the 3/4 by 1.5 reducer. I've seen 8 inches. Definitely want to use stainless on the bottom bell reducer because that's going to see a lot of heat. And I'm going to stop talking here in just a second so you can hear my excitement when I light this sucker. Okay, so we were pretty excited. So to keep the little piece from rotating, we drilled, we tapped, and then we screwed into the top of the reducer so that it will keep from turning and allow the propane to shoot straight down the tube. Insert the burner into your top mounting bracket, I suppose, and that goes into the body and into where the brick had the hole in it. Now I'm going to build kind of like a front shelf, and I'll also do the same thing for the back, where I can either rest the other fire bricks or even like a longer piece that will stick into the forge. And I'm just using pieces that I found around the shop. I have a lot of scrap metal in the shop, so there was nothing planned for why I did a 3-inch shelf. It could have been 2 or 4. It doesn't really matter, at least not for what I was doing. You'll have to do this based on your needs. I cut the brick in half so I could put one in the front and one in the back. Put this little bracket on top of the forge body. That way the pressure from the forge wouldn't blow the brick away, and this would kind of basically hold it in place. Hey dude, you should wear gloves. That was hot. Okay, front door, back door, both created. Let's test this guy out. Now you're going to see I actually have 2 bricks here now. If you stay to the after talk area, you'll see why. But I was really stoked about this, like cranking up and it working just the way I had hoped. There's just something sexy about red hot metal. I mean, that is just cool. I can't wait to get started with this. Hey, welcome to the afterthought. I've wanted to build a forge for quite some time now. And despite just jumping into the project, I actually signed up for several blacksmithing forums so that I could communicate back and forth with more experienced people in this area. And I also researched and watched a lot of videos and other types of material on building forges. What I found out was the body of the forge really kind of depends on what you plan to use this thing for. So if you want to forge small items, you may go with the smaller forge body. If you want to do larger items, obviously you go with a larger forge body. There is no magic size. One of the things that I discovered is the insulation is a topic of conversation. I wouldn't say debate. A lot of people use a minimum of 2 inches of wool, KO wool or a ceramic type fiber. Then you spray a rigidizer on the wool. Now the rigidizer basically locks in the fiber. It's my understanding, and again, please understand, I'm not an expert or professional in this. I'm just sharing with you what I have learned online and through various forums. The rigidizer basically holds the fiber in so that when the fire hits the fiber, it's not releasing fibers into the air that you now breathe. So it's important that if you were just using the fiber, that you use a rigidizer on the fiber. Now, because I had started buying materials as I was learning, I only picked up an inch thick layer of KO wool. And at that point thought maybe I could use refractory cement in the same way that, say, foundries are used, where you build up a layer of cement and then use that to melt steel. Because I lack patience and didn't apply this particular type of cement properly, after 2 days it just didn't cure. So I pulled that out. The KO wool actually seemed to be fine other than having a little bit of the cement still on it. And that's why I chose to go with the bricks. If you're building one of these forges for the very first time, I would say go with the bricks because this is easy, it's cheap. They're usually pretty accessible if you have a pottery supply place in your town. I think I paid for one brick about $5 to $6. They're easy to cut. I used like just a regular hand saw. And so inside the body of this forge, as you've seen, I have a 1-inch layer of KO wool and then probably about 1.25 inches worth of the brick. So one of the issues that I've had, and you didn't really see in the video, is air to flame ratio, I guess you could call it. I had a full brick, not only in the back, but I also had one in the front. So what would happen is that I would close it off, and both sides would be closed off, and you'd hear this pop, 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 poof. And it would backdraft out the top. Well, because I cut off the airflow and it couldn't breathe anymore. So I kept this brick on the back and did not vent the back at all, but I took these 2 bricks and now I keep a small opening there to kind of keep the airflow going. Another important part that I didn't realize until I got into the process was the regulator, the pressure regulator from the propane tank. It needs to be a high pressure regulator. There's a couple of videos out there that say you get a regulator from a barbecue grill, but those usually only go up to about 5 PSI, I think it is. I got one that was up to 40 PSI, and I have that thing turned wide open, and that's what I found worked for me. Also, one of the things that I did but didn't use was I provided a choke on top of the burner. But what I found, and this is maybe because of the size of my forge, is when I closed the choke up, it really kind of just burned more of a very dull, almost like barbecue-like flame. So it didn't really turn down the massive burner fire that you always see. It just stopped it. So I removed the choke on this particular forge. Now, I know that I'm going to be building another one, and maybe a choke will be necessary for a larger space, but I found that it wasn't needed for this one, at least not yet. I'm glad that it came out the way it did. I'm very happy. It was pretty inexpensive. The most costly part was the burner, but for the most part, it's an easy project to do. And so just do your research. Get out there and interact with some of the blacksmith forums and know that there is no magic forge size. You make the forge fit your needs that you're going to be using it for. And yeah. So hey, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so now. And if you have any questions or have any comments that you'd like to give me tips or pointers to help make this even better, please give those down in the bottom. Thanks again, and we'll see you.